and let's get started. Today we are going to be using the blender. This one comes with a number of functions at the base of the blender. For today's korma, we are going to be making the sauce. So we're going to be using the sauce button at the bottom, also the pulse at the top on both low and high speeds. I also have the ingredients here that we'll be using. I've already opened the diced tomatoes and the coconut cream can using the can opener. We have our maple syrup ready, as well as our carrots and peppers, which have been boiled to become nice and soft. There are 8 different spices that are going to be used in this sauce, and they include 3 tablespoons of curry powder, 1 tablespoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of garam masala, half a teaspoon of ground turmeric, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of desiccated coconut, and 2 tablespoons of ground almonds. Discussing the parts of the blender, you have the container here where the food will go in. It goes in through the lid, so the lid can be opened to put the food in, but you also want to make sure that the lid is tightly secured on the top for when the blender is on. The base of the blender is where the motor is, as well as the buttons to control the settings. To take the container off of the blender, you'll want to twist it sideways and then lift up to remove the blender. And then to put it back on, you do opposite. You put it on and then twist it until it's secure on the base. And it's time to start. Let's take the container off of the base and take the lid off of that. We're going to start by inserting our peppers and carrots into the blender. Next, we will add our can of diced tomatoes, as well as our can of coconut cream. And we'll measure out 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. The last group of ingredients are our 8 spices, so we will add those to the top of the container. As we can see here, our container is very full, so we'll want to make sure that the lid is on the container, nice and secure, and then place the container back onto the base, making sure that we lock it into place with the twist. It's nice and secure now. Let's give it a shot. This part's going to be loud, but we are going to press the sauce button and watch the magic happen. I turned the blender off for a moment because, as you can see, only the bottom part of the ingredients are being blended right now. So at this point, I'm going to remove the lid from the top of the container and take a wooden spoon and start to push down some of these spices. I don't have to go very deep into the container. I don't need to touch the blade at the bottom. I'm just using this as an opportunity to allow the spices to get to the bottom of the container. After a little bit, I'm going to take my wooden spoon out, replace the lid back onto the top of the container, and once it's secure, I can start to mix again. Once we have this beautiful orange color, we know we're done. To wash and clean the blender, you will want to safely remove the plug from the wall, and then take a damp cloth or sponge and wipe down the outside of the base. For the container and lid, you can actually take that and rinse it out in the sink and dump it into a nice soapy bath water. When hand washing the container in the sink, you will want to be careful with your sponge or cloth because there are blades at the base of the container that you don't want to get hurt on. And that's everything. With the blender clean and dry, it can be put back in its storage place. And you have a nice korma sauce to show for it. In summary, let's go over the parts of the blender one more time. The container is where the food items are placed. They go in through the top of the blender where the lid is. The lid can come off, but it should always be put back on tightly secure before the blender is used. The base of the blender is where the motor is, as well as the buttons for the different functions. You'll also notice that there is a padlock symbol on both sides of the blender, which show which way the container should be twisted to be taken off, and then twisted the opposite direction to be secured again while in use. When using the blender, sometimes the food products don't always reach the bottom where the blades are. If this ever happens, you can remove the lid of the blender and then use a spoon to help push down the food. You don't need to make the spoon touch the bottom where the blades are. You can just use the spoon at the top to help move the food products around. When you're done, the spoon comes out and the lid goes back on the blender until it's secure, and then the blender can be used again. For cleaning, the power cord should first always be unplugged, and then the base of the blender can be wiped down with a warm, damp cloth. The container and the lid of the blender can be removed and washed in the sink. Always be careful of the sharp blades at the bottom of the container. Make sure that you're not cutting yourself. Once the blender is clean, it can be put back together, cord wrapped up, and placed securely where it belongs.